If I had to relearn Spanish from scratch, this is the exact plan that I would follow. And some people may watch this video and completely disagree with all the tips that I give and the way that I go about learning Spanish. However, that is why I've titled this video The Way I Would Learn Spanish. It is not about the best way for everyone, but what you could do watching this video is hopefully take certain ideas and tips that I would use to relearn Spanish and implement them into your own plan. Or maybe you feel that this plan really works for you and you can just take the whole idea and implement it into your Spanish learning journey so you can help yourself reach fluency faster. And if you don't know me, my name is Rory. I've been studying Spanish for over 5 years now, and I am fluent in Spanish, which is still really cool to say at this point. And to create this video, what I've done is I basically sat down for a couple of hours and just thought, what would I do if I had to relearn Spanish from zero? What would be the most effective tools and the most effective methods and habits that I would build in order for me to reach fluency as fast as possible without it being too boring, too tedious, or too difficult as well at the same time. So hopefully I've got a balance of those things in here, and without further ado, let's get straight into the plan. And this plan is broken down into 3 sections, and the first section is what I call the complete beginner stage. And the first thing that I want you to do within this stage is just ask yourself, why do I want to learn Spanish? What you want to do when you're learning a language, something that's going to take you a lot of time, you want to know exactly why you're learning that language. What are your motivations? Why are the reasons you want to learn it? And the reason for this is because when it gets to those moments where you lack motivation, or you're not really feeling like studying, and you're 3 months down the line and you've hit a plateau where you feel like you're not making much progress and you're debating whether it's worth continuing, what you can do is you can look back at the reasons why you want to learn Spanish, and it'll just give you that extra bit of motivation and willpower to overcome that difficult period that you're in with Spanish, because trust me, you go through loads and loads of different challenges as you get closer and closer to fluency. So yeah, personally, I just think knowing your why from the beginning is so important. I'd stick them right above my desk, maybe have a sticky note explaining in quick, brief points why I want to learn Spanish, and I'd stick them somewhere visible in my room. So every time that I sat down to learn Spanish, I'd quickly remind myself why I want to do it, and it would just give me that extra spark of motivation. This task realistically only takes 5 minutes, and it is such a good way to start this beginner stage. And the next thing that I would do to actually start learning Spanish would be to learn the basic greetings. And the reason that I would do this as the first step is because it immediately gives you some vocab and phrases that you could use in Spanish. So if you met someone walking down the street, you could use those phrases and feel like you've already made significant progress within the language. So examples of this would be, hello, how are you? My name is this. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling unwell, I'm feeling great. These are the kind of basic things you want to just get a hold of, and this would only take you realistically half an hour. And the reason why this is also so beneficial is not only because you are learning immediately off the bat some vocab and phrases that you can use, but you're also immediately starting to improve your pronunciation and just your ability to read Spanish. And that's why it's such an easy, important first step that you can make within the language. And the third thing that I would do within this complete beginner stage is to learn the alphabet. I know some people might be thinking, oh, that's so boring, why am I going to do that so early into learning Spanish? But the reason I recommend doing this is because Spanish is such a phonetic language, and if you can understand and nail the alphabet early doors, you're going to help yourself so much with your pronunciation in the long run. And I've met a lot of people who never really studied the alphabet, and they've got to intermediate and advanced levels in Spanish, but their pronunciation is so bad because they've never gone and just done the basic thing of understanding the alphabet and understanding the phonetic side of Spanish. And what this means is, because they're so much further into their journey of learning Spanish, it's so much harder to undo all those bad habits that they built up from the 6-9 months of learning Spanish, and the 6-9 months they've been speaking bad Spanish with bad pronunciation. So if you can nail this from day one, you're going to avoid all of these pronunciation issues that a lot of non-native speakers have when they get further down the line of learning Spanish. So I think just get rid of this mistake as early as possible. And the next thing that I would do is buy a grammar resource. And the reason I recommend this is A, because you are spending money, and spending money means you're more likely to be committed to your journey of learning Spanish, and it also shows your commitment to yourself. And I think buying a grammar resource is so important as well, because it's just so hard to learn grammar, and I think without a set resource that you can use and go back to and sort of work your way through, it's much harder to learn grammar off the fly just by listening to Spanish or watching videos online. I think it's so much better to have a resource that gives you all of the information grammar-wise you can continually go back to and revise, and with questions and sort of worksheets you can go through, just so you can continually build on your grammar. And this is something that we're going to use in stage 2 of this plan. So yeah, I'd really recommend buying a grammar resource, not only because it's going to help you with your grammar and give you some structure, but it's also going to help you stay motivated and consistent in the long run, because you've actually invested some money into your Spanish learning journey, which makes it a lot more serious. And the final thing that I would do within this complete beginner stage is I would make an extensive list of the essential vocab within Spanish. So whether that be nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, all of those things, I would make extensive lists of in Spanish. And the reason I do this is because personally I find one really good way of helping things sort of sink into my brain and for me to actually be able to remember them is by first writing them down and then basically covering them up, practicing them that way and verbally recalling them. I find that's a really beneficial way for vocab and just generally things when I'm studying to stay in my head. And that might not work for you, but this is just something that I would do personally. And yeah, I know it seems quite boring and long as well, but unfortunately at the beginner stages you're going to have to do some of these difficult things, so it helps you in the long run. And again, once you make this list, you can just continually go back to it and revise it, and this will help you so much in the long run to build that really essential fundamental base of vocab that you're going to be using day in, day out in Spanish, and that you're also going to be hearing as you start to do more and more listening. And now at the end of the complete beginner stage, you've got the ball rolling. You've invested some money into your Spanish learning, you've got a good grammar resource that you can use, you've learned the basic greetings, you learned the alphabet, and you know exactly why you want to learn Spanish. Now, let's move on to section 2. And what I call section 2 is basically building a habit. Because as I said with learning Spanish, it is a very long process, and unfortunately it's not something that you can do for 3 weeks or a month or 3 months or 6 months and get to fluency. It's something that requires a lot of consistency over a long period of time. And the way you are going to do this is by building habits, or at least the way I would do this. I'm not going to say for you, because you might have different ways of going about it, but the way that I know I would do this and the way that I've reached fluency is by building a habit. So what this means is that within my schedule, I don't have to try and find time in order to incorporate my Spanish into my life or to try and study. I know already it's a habit built into my schedule, so I just do it without really thinking. And that means that your friction and the resistance for you to go and sit down and learn Spanish is so much lower, meaning that you are so much more likely to reach fluency. And now when it comes to creating these habits, what I would do is I would really ask myself, okay, when am I free throughout the day? When do I have 5 or 10 spare minutes? Maybe when I'm brushing my teeth, or when I'm going through to and from work, or maybe when I'm cooking dinner. These kind of things where I've got some spare time. What can I throw in the background, or what can I do in order to help me keep improving my Spanish? And these are the kind of habits they're just going to compound slowly and slowly over time to help you reach fluency. And that's the first thing that I'll do, just analyze throughout your day. When do I have free time? When can I fit in an extra 5 minutes of Spanish? And again, in the short term, you might be thinking, well, this is quite intense for just having started Spanish, but trust me, these things are going to compound and build in the long run. And now let's look at the habits that we want to incorporate into our daily lives. And the first one is using that grammar resource. For me personally, I would try and sit down even for 10 to 15 minutes daily, just going through a page or a page and a half of that grammar resource. And I've actually left a link in the description to a grammar resource that I would personally use and I highly recommend. It is on the more expensive side, but again, we've talked about investing money into your Spanish learning journey, and I realistically think that the £30 it might cost you is so beneficial in the long run, instead of spending it on 2 Nando's. If you live in the UK, you know what Nando's is. So yeah, that's personally what I would do. I would go and spend that money on that really good grammar resource that's going to help me for the next year on my Spanish learning journey. And personally, I would look at it as an investment, but obviously that's completely your decision. But yeah, what I would do is I'll be going through that grammar resource just 10 to 15 minutes every day and try and get through a page. And the second one would be regularly going through that vocab list that we created in the beginner stage of the plan. And also what you can do as well is there's loads of websites online that you can use. I use the app called Quizlet, but I know there's another one called Anki, which is quite popular at the moment. But you can basically use apps. So for example, say you're on public transport and you've left the sheet of paper with all the vocab on at home, or maybe you just don't want to get it out on a really busy public transport. Well, there's loads of apps on your phone that have built-in flashcards that you can use that other people have already created. Yeah, that's what I would recommend in terms of going about incorporating that habit into your daily life. And the next thing I want you to do is spend a minute to 2 minutes every single day just speaking some Spanish. And I know you might be thinking, what Spanish am I going to speak? I know literally 5 words. And that's perfect. Use those 5 words. Just say them. Practice saying those words, because your pronunciation is so important in the long run with your Spanish. And if you start building that habit of speaking Spanish early, it's going to pay off so much in the long run. Because I personally know so many people who have learned Spanish to a very high level, and their grammar and their understanding of vocab and their uses of the subjunctive and all these other really complex things are so high. However, they've put off speaking for so long that their pronunciation is so bad, they're actually afraid of speaking. So all this hard work that they put in learning Spanish, they're actually afraid to use it and go and have conversations in the real world because of how bad their pronunciation is, because they didn't start speaking early enough. And that's exactly what I want you to avoid, and that's exactly what I would avoid, and that's why I would be speaking from day one. Even if I only know the basic greetings, like we said, hello, how are you, what are you doing today, my name is this. Just say those things every single day. And the next habit that I'll try to incorporate is watching Easy Spanish videos. This is a YouTube channel that I find so beneficial for all levels of Spanish. And why I find this channel so beneficial is because they conduct real life interviews in Spanish speaking countries, and they have the Spanish subtitles and English subtitles on every single video. So even if you are a complete beginner, you can listen to the Spanish and read the English subtitles. And what this is doing is just helping you slowly pick up words and as the pronunciation of how Spanish speakers express themselves, the kind of vocab they use, the slang they use. And obviously at the start you're going to know absolutely nothing, and that's perfectly fine. But over time you'll slowly get more and more words and just become more comfortable with the pronunciation and the speed the Spanish speakers speak, because obviously it is very, very fast. With this exercise, I'm deliberately throwing myself in the deep end and I'm deliberately challenging myself. I'm not expecting myself to understand anything that they are saying. It's just the idea and the practice of building this habit of listening to Spanish regularly and being able to read English subtitles and hopefully picking up a couple of words here and there. I'll also listen to some basic Spanish podcasts. The first one that comes to mind is Spanish Pod 101. I'd recommend that one, and that is the one that I'd probably use going forwards with my Spanish. If you are walking to and from work, if you are on public transport, if you are chilling in the evening and want some downtime, you can just chuck a YouTube video on of the Easy Spanish, or you can chuck the podcast on for 20-25 minutes. And that's for sure something that I would be doing from day one. And the next habit that I would incorporate into my daily life is Spanish subtitles. If I was watching anything in English on Netflix, TV, YouTube, I'd make sure that I'd have Spanish subtitles on while I'm watching this video, because what it does is subconsciously you're probably going to read those Spanish subtitles and you're just going to be slowly picking up words and just picking up different phrases that are used. And this is just another little 1% that you can do that will compound over time to really help your Spanish. And trust me, the more these little 1% things you are doing, the faster you're going to get out of this beginner stage. I would also try and deliberately watch some more Spanish speaking shows and just put the English subtitles on as well, because there are some quite good shows, for example on Netflix, like Money Heist, Narcos, and Narcos has a bit of English speaking in it as well. So shows like that have Spanish speaking elements in it are very, very beneficial. I'd actively go and look to try and watch some more of those Spanish shows, because some of them are very good and very entertaining. So why not go and watch them and help your Spanish at the same time whilst you are being entertained. And another little tip that I would give, if you are on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or all of these TikTok, these kind of things, what you can do is follow Spanish accounts. And what I'll do is I'd follow a load of beginner Spanish accounts that teach you phrases and teach you pronunciation tips and little Spanish learning hacks. I'd follow all of them so that my feed slowly became filled with Spanish content, so that every time I went on these social medias, I was absorbing Spanish without even really trying to. And that is the end of section 2 of this plan of creating these habits that are going to help you in the long run. And I know I threw a load of different habits at you, and some of them you may be a bit overwhelmed with, or think, how am I going to balance all of this in with my daily life that is already quite busy? But don't worry, all I'm looking for is 5 to 10 minutes here and there when you're traveling or when you're waiting around for something. Can you just flick the Spanish thing on, or can you put the Spanish subtitles on when you are having downtime watching an English show? These are the kind of little things that are going to help you in the long run. And I know unfortunately some of these are going to take sacrifice. Maybe, for example, you really enjoy listening to music while you commute to and from work, and now you're going to swap that with a Spanish podcast or practicing Spanish vocab. But unfortunately, these are some of the sacrifices that you're going to have to make if you are serious about learning Spanish. For me personally, I know without a shadow of a doubt, I would be making these trade-offs. So yeah, these are the exact habits that I'll be incorporating into my daily life. And now let's move on to the third and final section of this plan, making it long term. And I personally would start the final stage of this plan roughly about 2 or 3 weeks after the building a habit section. And the reason for this is because it gives you time to get used to these habits and to find ways to incorporate them into your daily life, and just getting used to having Spanish as part of your daily routine. And once you have done this, now it's time to set some goals to work towards, so that you have a clear direction and clarity as to where you are going in your Spanish journey. And personally for me, the first goal that I would set for 3 months down the line is to be able to use the present tense with a decent range of vocab and a strong base of grammar. And the reason that I would pick this as my goal for 3 months down the line is because I believe it's realistic with the amount of effort that I would be putting in incorporating all of these habits, using my grammar resource and doing my bits of speaking here and there. And then once I have that 3 month goal, I'd basically work backwards so I could form what I need to do and what needs to be done in order for me to reach that 3 month goal. So if we were trying to reach this goal in 3 months and being able to use the present tense, have a decent range of vocab and grammar, the things you need to do is first of all learn the verbs that you're going to use in the present tense, and you need to learn how to conjugate them in the present tense and the different forms of how they're conjugated. You'd have to look at the irregular and regular verbs. You'd have to learn how to conjugate them in the present tense, building your vocab generally so that you have enough vocab in order for you to form sentences in Spanish. You'd also need to continue using that grammar resource so that you're improving your grammar, so that you have enough so you can form sentences. And you also need to improve your pronunciation. So these are some of the things you need to be thinking about when it comes to learning Spanish and reaching the 3 month goal. And luckily, because of the habits we've created, we are already doing a lot of these things within that plan, but now we just need to sort of target it and streamline it more towards its goal. Before, we were just learning grammar without really thinking about it, but now we know that we need to focus more on the present tense verb conjugations and how verbs are actually conjugated in the first place. These are the things we need to focus on in order to reach that goal, being able to use and conjugate verbs in the present tense. And then we need to start looking at regular and irregular verbs in the present tense and how those work, and we also need to focus more on learning verbs so we can conjugate them and actually use them in the first place. So these are some of the things you need to be thinking about, and from there you can start to build a roadmap of, okay, well, this week I'm going to learn these verbs, and then the next week I'm going to learn these verbs, and then the week after that I'm going to learn how to conjugate verbs in the present tense, and then I'm going to learn how to conjugate irregular verbs in the present tense. These are some of the steps that you can make across the next couple of weeks in order to reach that 3 month goal. And then ideally within the last 2 or 3 weeks of that of that third month, you can be focused on actually just speaking. And now at this stage, I have my plan, I have all the habits that I'm doing on a daily basis, and I have a goal I'm working towards. And all of these things combined lead to us having a really, really strong foundation and path in order to reaching a high level of Spanish. And once I reach that target of being able to conjugate verbs in the present tense, be able to use a decent range of vocab and grammar, I would then basically restart this plan and restart this process of setting a 3-month goal and working backwards from that. Because for me personally, I think it's just so beneficial having a clear goal as to where you want to go. And I think 3 months is the right time because it allows you to set a big goal without it being too far away, and then you can make realistic steps that are going to help you build up towards that goal for the next 3 months. And that's exactly what I would do. And this is the end of the 3-step plan that I would follow to get out of that complete beginner stage in Spanish, and hopefully you found it beneficial. And before I end the video, I'm just going to give you some extra tips that I would definitely be using at all stages in my Spanish. And the first tip that I want to give is I would not use Duolingo. I saw a good thing the other day that Duolingo is a productive waste of time. It's more of a game. You're not really learning Spanish, you're just focusing on getting points and maintaining a streak. And I know so many people who basically use Duolingo because they aren't really serious enough to learn Spanish, but they still want to feel like they're making progress and learning some vocab. But realistically, if you are serious about learning Spanish, I would steer clear of that app and not use it at all, because the time that you're using Duolingo, you can use that on Quizlet or learn vocab instead, or watch Easy Spanish videos or listen to podcasts. These things are so much more beneficial in the long run than using Duolingo, which is more of a game, which is quite slow and you're learning random vocab, and realistically you're just doing it to keep a streak and earn some points. And yeah, that's the first thing that I definitely wouldn't be doing. And the second thing is I'd be very adaptable with my plan. And I know we've mentioned a load of different habits that you incorporate into your daily life, and a lot of these things take a lot of time. And I know for a lot of us, there's going to be points in our lives where things come up, whether that be personal things or just we become really busy at work or school, and that's fine. Spanish is going to have to take a back seat in those moments, and that's perfectly fine. But the idea with this is to still do as many of those habits as you can, even if it's just 10 to 15 minutes every day of watching Easy Spanish videos, or even if it's just when you're chilling in the evening after a long day, if you put the Spanish subtitles on, just do those little things. It's really going to help and compound in the long run, instead of when you get to a really busy stage, completely sacking off Spanish for 2 weeks, and then you're taking 3 steps back. Instead, if you just listen to 10 minutes of a podcast, or you still do 10 minutes of a grammar resource before you go to bed, and that's all you can fit in your day-to-day schedule because of how much you've got going on, that's perfectly fine. Be adaptable and don't think that you either have to do all of these habits at once or do nothing. I, in the past, would have definitely been that person. If I wasn't doing all of these habits and studying for an hour and a half, 2 hours every day, I would do nothing. And that isn't the way to go about it. And the next tip that I would say is make as many mistakes as possible. Whether you're at a beginner stage, or an intermediate stage, or an advanced stage, or a fluent stage, you are going to make mistakes. It is unavoidable. I still make mistakes with my Spanish. So don't be afraid of it. The more mistakes you make, the faster you're going to learn and improve your Spanish. And the last tip that I'm going to give that I for sure would use is I would constantly be upping the difficulty of the things that I'm doing as my Spanish improves. So it's kind of this thing of, as my Spanish improves and the difficulty is kind of too easy, I'd bring the difficulty back up to here so that I can improve my Spanish, and then bring the difficulty up more, and that kind of thing is what I would do. So for example, if I was listening to the Spanish Pod 101 and I was finding that too easy, well then I'd go to a more native speaking Spanish podcast so that I'm still sort of out of my depth and I'm still pushing myself. Or for example, if you're watching the Easy Spanish videos and you were reading the English subtitles, once you get to a strong stage with that and you're feeling comfortable with it, move on to the Spanish subtitles and start reading the Spanish subtitles only, and don't use English ones unless you're really confused. The next stage would be to just have the video on in the background and not reading any subtitles. And yeah, those are the tips that I would use. I've got a couple more, but I don't want to throw any more information at you. I know this video has already been very long and there's loads of information in it, so I'm going to end it here. And yeah, hopefully you found this video beneficial, and this is realistically the plan that I would use. If you have any things you disagree with or think would be better, feel free to drop me a comment and let me know, but this is just what I feel would work best for me with my lifestyle and the way that I find it most effective to learn, and the things that I find most enjoyable when it has come to learning Spanish. So yeah, hope you found this video beneficial, and I'll see you in the next one. Hasta la próxima. Adios.